Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. This recommendation is to hold the item open. So we will do that and move to transition to issue number 6 with Human Resources Division staff. Thank you.
Squeaks. Good afternoon, Sherry Gastineau, Deputy Secretary of Administrative Services. And just a brief overview. In the last 5 years, Veterans Affairs has opened 5 new homes and a new cemetery. And the staffing has gone from approximately 2,000 to 3,200. However, the administrative staffing support has not increased. So that's why we have this BCP proposal and spring finance letter. Any questions on?
Any additional comment? I know LAO's good for the next number of items. Department of Finance, no? No public comment on this item. Any questions from our board? Okay. So I think I'll defer on that. We could go ahead and proceed. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Moving to issue number 7, Administrative Support Services.
Sherry Gastineau, Deputy
Hope you enjoyed that lengthy break. You may proceed.
It's kind of the spring finance letter just goes to the growth of the homes and getting the administrative support, human resources, and information systems division.
Any comments? Additional comments? Seeing none. Public comment? We will also be holding this item open. Colleagues, seeing no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And finally, with the department, Yountville Veterans Home renovations, an ongoing issue we've been looking at. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Deanna Beelan, Capital Assets of Department of Veterans Affairs. So the issue 8 are 2 reappropriation requests for the Yountville capital outlay projects. The first being the steam distribution system renovation project, and the request is for the reappropriation of unencumbered balance of $6.9 million. $2.8 million is lease revenue bond funds, and $4.1 is federal funds. And the second is the water distribution system renovation, and this is for a request for the unencumbered balance of $5.4 million. 1.7 is lease revenue bond, and 3.7 is federal funds. And these 2 projects, we received legislative authority in 2011. The scope of work for both of these has not changed, so this is strictly reappropriating the funds to add more time. The STEAM is currently in the preliminary plans phase. We have experienced a little bit of design delays with evaluating the complexity of the scope of work, and so DGS determined going out to outside A&E firm instead of designing in-house. And the anticipated completion for the preliminary plans is March of 2017. The working drawings is estimated to be completed in April 2018, and construction to begin in fall of 2018.
So I appreciate the report. To what would you attribute some of those delays? I mean, what's at the heart of that?
Yeah, so initially both of the projects, the delay was in strategizing for the funding. So there was a Veterans Home bond, GO bond, of 2000, that there was $50 million in that bond, and $31 million went to Glavic, $15 million went to Yountville, and so there was time spent trying to see what the remaining balance was to determine. There was actually 3 projects: central plant renovation, the chilled water, and the steam, that were all together at one time. And then in trying to determine the funding and what was remaining in those GO bonds, how to fund these 3 cap outlay projects, we separated them out, and then the central plant was funded by the GO bonds, and then the chilled water, the preliminary plans, the GO bond funded that phase as well. And then there was working with our partners, Department of Finance, in looking at lease revenue bonds and also the federal grant process, to the pre-application and updating each year on the federal side. Yeah.
Any comment from Department of Finance on this issue?
Not at this time.
Okay. And these are, help me out here, these are independent from that kitchen issue we had, right?
Yeah,
I
These
remember
are
we spent
capital outlay
we spent
projects.
some quality time on the kitchen.
Right.
But this is independent of that.
yeah. So we have the kitchen, we have these capital outlay projects, we have a deferred maintenance program, we have a variety of projects going on at Yountville, all ongoing, funded from different levels, et cetera.
Okay. Any additional or any public comment, I should say? Any questions from colleagues? Seeing and hearing none, the recommendation is to hold this item open as well. Thank you very much for the presentation.
You bet.
Thank you.
Moving to the Secretary of State. Thank you all for the presentation, and thanks, Secretary of State, for your patience. It's been a long afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. You may proceed when you're ready.
My name is Chris Reynolds. I'm the Chief of the Political Reform Division at the Secretary of State's office. On item number 9, the Secretary of State is requesting an augmentation of $757,000 from the Restricted Political Disclosure, Accountability, Transparency, and Access Fund, which could be used upon appropriation for the maintenance, repair, and improvement of the electronic and online reporting and disclosure program, which has as its major technological component CalAccess, the Campaign Lobby Activity Electronic Reporting and Disclosure System. The CalAccess system project is necessary because the system as a whole, deployed in the year 2000, is nearing end of life. All components of the system, the hardware, the firmware, and the software, are increasingly vulnerable, and it's difficult to find components for the system and to find vendors that support it. The system itself is an amalgamation of applications written in 14 different programming languages, and efforts to upgrade CalAccess to respond to policy changes or improve its functionality are labor-intensive, high-risk propositions. And the system has experienced outages. For an entire month from November 2011 through December 2011, has also experienced nearly monthly interruptions of service since that time as well. Some have prevented, for a limited amount of time, the public from accessing data and prevented filers from filing. The most recent incident occurred from 3 p.m. until 6 p.m. on April 28th, last Friday, which was the first pre-election filing deadline for campaign committees involved in the June primary. There is widespread agreement that the current system should be replaced with a new system with modern functionality that is more user-friendly so that it makes filing easier and provides greater access to data. This request supports the effort to replace the system. The question was posed, what specific problems does the department plan to address with consultant services? We plan to do project management planning and particularly business requirements. The evolution of IT projects and project management has shown that it takes expertise to draft business requirements for a project. While we will provide the program expertise to support the development of the business requirements, those business requirements are at the heart of the procurement process, which begins with the development of a request for proposal. We need the expertise to craft business requirements that will tell the vendor community, those that will bid on the project and develop the project, what the system needs to do. The better we explain the business requirements, the more we can ensure that the state gets the system it needs.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Additional comment from LAO or DOF on this particular item? So this one is important to me. Not that the others weren't, just this particularly piques my interest because the Cal Access system is central to transparency. It's a window in for the public to see the activities with regard to campaign contributions and so forth. It's sort of a front page in some respects to the political finance, campaign finance system in the state. So this is a critical project that we need to embark on, and I would like to see us accelerate this project. I would like to just go on the record saying that I support the full 14 million or so allocation that be needed to bring about the upgrades. This system needs immediate help. We had an issue on the actual filing day of the crash, as you indicated. It just shows the strains on the system and the need to move quickly. Being on this subcommittee, we've had our share of IT and procurement issues. So I guess maybe when I hear procurement, when it's related to IT, something that there's a little bit of an alarm bell there. Nonetheless, I think the recommendation is to hold this item open, but I think I would urge the chair that we give consideration to an acceleration of this process and moving forward with a full allocation so we can get these improvements and the public can then have the appropriate level of access to the data. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and turn the gavel back to you as well.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. At this point, does Finance or LAO have any comments to make? No? Any public comments?
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Nazarian, members of the committee. Gavin Baker with California Common Cause. We support the request for the Cal Access Replacement Project. As you heard, this is an important transparency system which crashed again just last week. Wanted to bring to your attention that there is parallel legislation to this request. It's SB 1349, which we're very proud to have a bipartisan set of co-authors, including Assemblymember Mullen, and which did pass the Senate Elections Committee with bipartisan support. I would also note, as Assemblymember Mullen pointed out, that this is an initial request for funding for the project. As the committee memo points out, additional future funding would be required, and we would support, in order to expedite the project, an allocation for the total project costs at this time. If the committee does hold this open, we would encourage that issue to be considered in the ultimate decision. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think at this time we are going to be holding this item open because there's going to be more items that we're going to be hearing about potentially, from what I understand, later on. So look forward to working with you after the revise. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So the next item, issue number 10, is the Spring Finance Letter, California Business Connect.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Betsy Bogart, Chief of the Business Programs Division for the California Secretary of State and co-sponsor of the California Business Connect project. And we are requesting your approval and continued support to provide $2.6 million worth of spending authority $2 million from the Business Programs Modernization Fund, which was created to further IT projects to help businesses, and $605,000 from the Business Fees Fund. And we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Any comments from LAO? No. Finance? No?
We also provided you with a hard copy of our April 2016 Joint Legislative Budget Committee report on the project.
Thank you. So do you foresee, or does the Secretary's office, Secretary of State office, anticipate needing any additional positions?
No. We are reclassifying some of our business programs division positions to our IT shop to help support the new system. But at this time, we're actually, once the system gets implemented, actually looking to eliminate positions through attrition, as well as the 52 or 54 limited term positions that we're currently using to help with processing the paper filings until we get California Business Connect.
Okay. No questions from the committee or comments from the public? We're going to hold this item open as well. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Where's my screen? Good afternoon. I'm Joanne Wenzel, representing the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education. The Bureau is requesting transfer of expenditure authority of $183,000 and 2 positions related to the administrative of STRIF claims from the Bureau's admin fund to the STRIF fund. And we're happy to respond to any questions.
LAO.
Helen Kirstein with the Legislative Analyst's Office. We haven't raised any concerns with the proposal. We note that our understanding is that these positions support the Student Tuition Recovery Program, so we find it's appropriate for that fund to support the positions.
Okay. Finance? Nothing? So can you tell me what the rationale is on shifting the burden to the student, SPRF?
These 2 positions work directly for only the activities associated with STRIF claims, so it's more appropriate to have the administrative costs borne by that fund.
And how do you in light of also some of the issues that have come about in recent times, how do you decipher between which dollars get expended given certain schools' practices and that may not prove to be successful and schools that have been very successful?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'm going to take a stab at it. Basically, the STRIF fund exists to mitigate economic loss suffered by students because of either school closure or failure of an institution to pay refunds. And this proposal will allow, the Bureau in the past has basically gone out to speak with all of those students and done a lot of one-on-one contact with these students to try to make them aware of their rights under this STRIF fund. And this will allow some flexibility for the Bureau to staff up or down depending on what the situation is with any particular catastrophe that might be impacting students.
I guess the question is more about, there have been schools that have been bad actors, and so why should the burden of the cost now be borne on students who may be attending those schools?
Well, this is not, the prior bureau had the same setup, and basically it just makes sense. There's a direct nexus between paying for the assistance that's provided to these students. Basically, some of the assistance that we provide are contact with the students, counseling them basically on what their options are and their pathways facing a school closure, working with them to find their lenders on loan discharges. So basically, we're providing services for these students, and it's the Bureau's opinion that it makes sense to pay for those services from the STRIF fund.
Okay. All right. Well, this item is also going to be held open until after the May revise. So thank you very much for being here.
You're welcome.
Unless if there are any public comments on this issue? Nope. Last item, deferred maintenance projects. Bless you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Sally Lukenbill, Department of Finance. My colleague, Radha Nassar, is going to present this item today, Control Section 6.10, Deferred Maintenance.
Radha Nassar, Department of Finance. As staff notes in the agenda, this proposal is virtually the same as the deferred maintenance proposal, which the legislature approved in 2015-16. However, it's much larger at $518 million and more expansive. It allocates funding to 23 departments statewide versus 11, and also includes an additional funding source, the motor vehicle account. The proposal for 2016-17 continues to provide significant legislative oversight. It includes legislative notification of the final project lists for each department listed in the control section prior to the allocation of any funds, and a 30-day review period for comment. As noted in the agenda, these lists are already in near final form, and with the exception of the Department of Water Resources, they were distributed to legislative staff and the LAO on April 29th. They are currently available for legislative review and comment, and I have copies here if anybody would like a copy. The lists contain over 1,100 individual projects, not including the $100 million in projects that will be submitted for the Department of Water Resources. Consistent with the 2015-16 proposal as approved by the legislature, the 2016-17 proposal also includes a quarterly notification requirement to the legislature regarding any changes to the initially approved lists. We would also note that Control Section 6.10, as currently crafted, is working very well. To date, we've submitted 3 quarterly notification letters detailing changes to the original lists. So far, only 5 departments have requested changes, and they've all been fairly minor. We'd also note that we recently received status updates from each department on their 15-16 projects, and the updates indicate that departments are making significant progress in contracting for and completing the projects. The status updates have also been provided to legislative staff. We believe that this proposal, which builds on the successes of the 2015-16 process approved by the legislature, demonstrates the administration's continued commitment to addressing the very large backlog of deferred maintenance. I'd be happy to take any questions.
I wonder how much of the needs that you have here can potentially be addressed in the long-term capital outlay project, and how many of these items will be taken off, unless if these are all facilities or infrastructure needs that are outside of Sacramento. So it's just a comment,
Yes.
given how much needs we have.
Yeah, the projects are statewide, so they're not just in the Sacramento area, and they are strictly deferred maintenance projects.
LAO?
Helen Christine with the Legislative Analyst's Office. I believe you have a short brief that our office prepared on this topic. I just want to provide a few high-level comments. I think our overall perspective is that deferred maintenance is an important state need and priority, so we do appreciate that the administration is coming forward with another proposal to address this need. We do, however, raise several specific concerns with the proposal. One, as was noted in our brief, is the lack of detailed information on the proposal. So as the Department of Finance noted, last Friday we were provided with a draft list of the proposed projects, but up till that point we hadn't received that list. We certainly are reviewing that list, and we do recommend that the legislature also review that list in the coming weeks. We know there isn't a lot of time, but we do think in the coming weeks that it's valuable to review that list and for the legislature to feel comfortable with the projects that are on that list. For example, if there are some projects that the legislature feels are lower priority, for example, there may be some projects that are more aesthetically, sort of focus on more aesthetic concerns like carpet or paint. Those might be lower priorities than some of the projects that are focused on safety issues or are focused on building integrity issues like roof issues, for example. So we think there's value in the legislature reviewing the list and potentially making changes to the funding amounts for the various departments depending on the legislature's comfort level with that list. We also think that there's value in having departments continue to report and provide information, and the administration to provide information on really what's causing the deferred maintenance backlog and why it's changing. So if you look at our brief on page 5, we have a little chart which I think illustrates this point pretty clearly, and you can see the amount of identified deferred maintenance needs for several different departments, and you can see that it varies. It's varied significantly over time. So in some cases, there have been substantial increases between 15-16 and 16-17. In other cases, decreases. And it's not always clear why this has happened. And so we think it's important for the legislature to have an understanding of what's leading to these types of changes and whether departments have plans for addressing the backlog, because we don't think that every year we should need to have funding for addressing deferred maintenance backlog. We think that we should have a plan for addressing the backlog, we should address it, and then departments should be held responsible for adequately maintaining their facilities on an ongoing basis, so we don't develop these backlogs periodically. So we think that's an important concept. And then our last point is really that we think that the process doesn't provide sufficient legislative oversight, the process that is being proposed by the administration. So actually the process that the administration has proposed, they do need to provide an initial list to the legislature with a 30-day review period. But then if they make changes to that list, they just have to provide a quarterly notification. And so they can actually start those projects prior to the legislature getting that notification potentially. And so we think it's important for the legislature to know what the projects are, and we actually recommend that they be memorialized in the supplemental reporting language. And then certainly if there are changes to those project lists, we think that the legislature should be notified at least 30 days in advance of those changes. So if there are concerns, and they may or may not be. They might be just routine kinds of things, but we certainly think that the legislature should have an opportunity to see those projects prior to the changes being made.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so I just want to understand what I'm looking at here. So, for example, the handout Judicial Council Deferred Maintenance Project List, these are projects that if this budget proposal was approved, these projects would be dealt with. These projects would be funded, and there would be, I'm just looking at this list. There's like dozens of roof replacements all happening at the same time, and dozens of elevator replacements happening at the same time. So I don't know if you could answer this question, but clearly there's a need there to replace all these elevators, but they all appear on the list. They're all going to be funded. I assume these elevators are in varying degrees of, I don't know if decay is the right word. Clearly they need to be replaced. Is this the kind of thing where the state does this in mass? So there's a procurement process, and there's one primary firm that does all of these? Are you experiencing economies of scale by having so many elevator replacements, for example, or so many roof replacements and doing it all at the same time? Can you just comment on how that process works?
Yeah, it's going to be up to each department to manage their deferred maintenance. So to the extent that they use in-house resources to manage those, I'm sure they will take advantage of economies of scale when they can. Would be the same concept, too, if they did go outside and use general services to manage these projects. But it is true that you will see on these lists numerous projects that are very similar: roof replacements, elevator, boiler replacements, HVAC. So to the extent that they can be combined into a single contract, that I'm sure would be done. That would be the most efficient and cost-effective way to handle these. The problem is that they're statewide. They're all over the state in different facilities all over the state. So it'll be just a matter of managing it in the best and most efficient way possible for each department.
Any other questions? Any public comments? Thank you so much. This item will also be held open until after the May revise. Going back to issue number 2, cigarette and tobacco products tax program. Staff recommendation is to approve the allocation of $5.2 million for the cigarette and tobacco tax compliance fund. There's a vote count of 3 to 1 not voting right now. Can we open the roll?
Wilk.
Aye.
Great. That passes on 4 to 1. Thank you so much. 4 to 0. Thank you.